everybody, Lynn Burkhead with MajorLeagueFishing.com and one of my favorite anglers on the Bassmaster Elite Series and now the Major League Fishing circuit, Mr. Brandon Palaniuk. Brandon, you're one of the most successful young anglers out there. You've really taken the fishing world by storm. First thing I got to ask you is, how does a guy from Idaho, that's steelhead country, that's trout country, that's bull trout country, how did you get started in bass fishing?
Well, I was very fortunate when I was growing up. Idaho's full of lakes. I got 9 lakes within 30 minutes of my house. Got one 5 blocks from my house that I can walk to, and they all have bass in them. Just nobody knows about it because it's overshadowed by how good the trout fishing is.
Mm-hmm.
Good part is all those bass eat those trout. We don't tell them that over there because we'd have a fishing game down at us. But I had a guy when I was 8 years old, a family friend. His name's Jeremy Tripp, and he fished local tournaments around the house, and he took me out when I was 8 years old. And from that day, I said, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to catch bass for a living.
Okay, you knew you wanted to catch bass, and that's easy for a guy like me or somebody watching this to understand because the bass is kind of America's fish in many ways. It's in virtually every state in the United States. I think maybe Alaska is the only place that you're not going to find a black bass swimming around. But how did you decide you wanted to play the tournament game for a living?
Well, I'd started fishing tournaments with him when I was 8 years old. He started me fishing the club tournaments, and we'd done well there. When I was 14, I went out on my own and started fishing with another buddy of mine that was the same age. We're 2 14-year-old kids in a 16.5-foot bass tractor with a little 25 horse on the back. Thought we owned the world, and
Well, the way you fish, you probably did.
I won my first tournament.
Actually, really?
On a Terminator T1 spinnerbait. I still have the spinnerbait. I keep it in my box. It's all mangled up now, but I threw it for 8 years before I finally broke it and won a lot of money on that same spinnerbait. And it just kind of transpired into, the more I did it, the more I wanted to do it. And when I was 16, I joined the Federation Nation at the time. Now it's Bass Nation. But we didn't have the high school fishing. We didn't have college fishing. There wasn't even the junior federation at that point for me to fish. So I had to wait till I was 16 to join the adult side. And I spent 7 years in the federation competing, fish national championships and fish both the BASS side and the FLW, the TBF side. And fished, just as much as I could until when I was 22 years old, finally won the national championship, qualified for my first classic, qualified for the elites, and here we are 4 years later sitting talking about Major League Fishing.
I wanted to ask you this question. Idaho is pretty far north, and the black bass that live in Idaho are basically northern or native strain largemouths. So how does a guy from skiing country, from trout country, who fishes for native or northern largemouth bass, far away from the epicenter of the, quote, bass fishing world, how did you invade the southern United States, places like Texas, the southeast, the east coast, and do so well against guys that understand the personality of lakes, the nuances of the Florida strain largemouth bass? It's a game that I would have thought would have been different to some degree, and would have been a learning curve or some time for a guy like you from where you come from in Idaho to learn and to be able to compete on the southern turf, so to speak. You had no part of that. You said, it's a fish, it's a black bass, I'm going to go catch it, and you did, and you've caught a lot of them. You've won tournaments, you've fished at the highest level, you've even contended already for the Bassmaster Classic. You've really taken the fishing world by storm. How did you do that?
Well, when I got out and started, getting outside of Idaho, getting into the south, the east, I was just glad that finally everything I read in the magazines and read online made sense. Because all the time at home I was reading about all these shad spawns and how these bass follow the shad, and I'm thinking, what in the world is a shad? And why does a bass have anything to do with the shad? And, I would try to read those magazines, read everything online, and try to make sense of it in Idaho. Well, when I came back east into the south, all of that information was backlogged into my brain of how these fish moved, and that was the biggest thing, was just having an understanding of of the seasonal patterns of bass and how they related to structure. And the shad thing kind of throws a twist in it, but not all times of the year. Right? I mean, you got kind of the shad spawn, and then later in the year in the fall when the shad die off. That's really only the 2 times a year that I feel like it changes the bass behavior outside of what you see in some of the northern lakes, such as Idaho.
Well, you've been very successful on in the various circuits that you fish that are affiliated with the Bass Angler Sportsman Society. But in the last several years, there's been something new, a new game in town, a new kid on the block, new sheriff in town, maybe, and that's called Major League Fishing. It's a different way of playing the game. It's very exciting. It's very intense. You see a lot of train wrecks out there, and you see a lot of great fishing out there. It's been the most fun thing I've ever watched up close and personal. I'm very interested to see how you transition into Major League Fishing. How do you think you're going to do?
I'm excited about it. The way I look at it is everybody's on an even playing field. You can't get out-infoed, and what I mean by that is you can't know somebody that knows a lake better, and they give the guy a bunch of information. I've always tried to do things on my own and figure them out and try to do something different than everybody else. And for me, Major League Fishing just plays right into that. Nobody knows where we're going until you show up at the boat ramp. And at that point, you still don't even know what the lake's like. You get out there, you get 15 minutes to drive around. You got 15 minutes to figure it out, and you better figure it out quick because you're fishing against the best guys in the world.
I've always described it to friends that I talk to about what Major League Fishing is, as it's fishing by the seat of your pants.
Yep.
You come in with, as you said, no information, no practice, nothing. Nope. And you have to develop something almost immediately. But one thing you also have to do is you also have to react to what your competitors are doing in a way that you don't on the traditional tournament circuits. Yeah. You're going to be hearing what's going on with the Score Tracker Live updates, whether you want to or not. And that's where a lot of the train wrecks begin.
Yeah. I go back to my wrestling background. I started wrestling the same time as I started bass fishing, around 8 years old, and wrestled all the way into college. And to my knowledge, to this day, that's the most mentally demanding sport there is on this planet. And so I learned a lot of, mental toughness, different techniques to deal with things like that. And I've always, looked at guys like Kevin Van Dam and Gerald Swindle and these guys, that have been in the sport for a long time and have really dominated at periods of their career, and tried to figure out, what separates these guys from the other 100 guys on tour or the other 24 guys in the MLF. And it's their mental ability, to process the information that's coming in, whether it's on the water information or the Score Tracker Live information that's coming in. They either put that in the back of their mind or they use it to their advantage, whatever information is coming in. And those guys that are consistently at the top just process that information that much quicker, and are always able to turn it into a positive, and then act on what's going through their brain.
I've always thought that it takes playing the game once before you truly understand what you're getting into. You can watch it on TV, you can talk to other people, and you can kind of gather some ideas, but until you live it, you really have no idea what you're walking into. Knowing that, and knowing you're on the cusp of going into your first round of competition in Major League Fishing, is there anything that concerns you?
I am known to just boat flip a lot of fish, and so I have a feeling that I'll be pretty heavy on the penalty side because, my theory in, past tournament fishing is just get them in the boat. Mm-hmm. If it's on the carpet or whatever, it's in the boat, even better. But now I can't touch the boat. I can't hug it. I can't grab it. The only thing I can do is, lip that fish or get a hold of it with my hands, which is better conservation. That's my hat's off to MLF for making that rule. It makes it more exciting, but it's also better for the fishery. And so I'm afraid I'm going to definitely rack up some penalty points on that one.
Trust me, you won't be alone if you do. One last question, and that is you're one of the fan favorites. You're one of the most popular young guys out there on the professional circuits. As you've traveled around, as you've gone to the various Elite Series tournaments, as you've gone to things like the Toyota Texas Bass Classic, as you've worked the seminar circuit and the show circuit and talked to fans, what sense do you get that the average bass fishing fan has the excitement level they have for Major League Fishing?
One of the well, I'll put it this way. One question that I've gotten at every single show or every event that I've worked this year is, when are you going to be on Major League Fishing? That's one question that at every show, I promise you, I've got asked, and multiple times by multiple people. And I mean, there's nothing else that I can think of that has been that repetitive. So I know that people are watching it. I know people love watching it. And they just have consistently asked. And before we were able to say that we're on there, I had to tell them, I don't know. I'm waiting for the invite. I'm trying to get my way in there. And now I can tell people. They say, hey, when are you going to be on Major League Fishing? Well, here in a couple days. We'll be out there.
Well, it's going to be fun to watch you and a lot of the others, Jason Christie and Mark Rose and others, who are getting their first taste of Major League Fishing this week through the selects. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch the new blood come in. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
And welcome to Major League Fishing.
I appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Brandon Palaniuk. He is a Major League Fishing angler, one of the best angling pros in the world, and he's going to get to try the format that has the fishing world abuzz, Major League Fishing. For more, go to MajorLeagueFishing.com.